Welcome back, guys, to the Mas Futbol Podcast. Today, we've got a special guest, someone who knows the game inside and out, from playing the collegiate level to coaching at the highest levels in Oklahoma. He's a former Oklahoma Christian University standout and a coach who's built successful programs. And now he's back at OC, leading the men's soccer team. Coach, is it Neil Hilton?
Yep.
Nice. We're diving into his journey from England to Oklahoma and what it's like to playing in the U.S. and transition into coaching and what it means to return to OC as the head coach. Plus, we'll talk about the player development, coaching philosophies, and what it really takes to succeed at the next level. It's going to be a fun episode, but let's get right into it. Neil, my friend, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, I appreciate you for coming on the podcast. I always like to start the podcast by really starting to get to know where the passion for soccer came from, and then we can kind of go into what you're doing now. But where did football start for you?
Started from birth, honestly. It was a very young age. Grew up, my dad was my coach, played locally in Liverpool. Obviously grew up a huge Liverpool supporter, went to match very, very often, followed Liverpool all over the country, all over Europe at times. And yeah, the passion starts from a very young age. And I had the passion for a lot of different sports, honestly. Growing up, I played a lot of sports, but football or soccer was always the prime sport alongside cricket. And then obviously it just developed. But the passion, I would say, started from a very young age, playing youth soccer for just a local team in the area that I grew up in, called St. Anne's Rovers. And that's where it all began.
Interesting. So you lived in Liverpool?
About 15 minutes outside the city centre of Liverpool.
Okay,
yeah.
So I guess would be like an Edmond to an Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Okay, now I guess obviously you live it very differently in England than you do here, but I feel like Liverpool has such a strong soccer community because it's divided, right?
Yep.
What is that like? Because I can't imagine.
I think it's like any rivalry. There's some who take it not so seriously, and it's a bit of a friendly rivalry because of your next door neighbour can be an Everton fan, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, which is Andrew. But you can have friendly rivalries, and then you've got the diehard fans who pretty much hate each other, and it's same as any rivalry across the world. But it's a very football driven city, obviously, as well as music. But yeah, football's a massive part of the city, and just what you grow up with and what you live with every day of your life.
Nice. Now your father, he played, correct?
He did, not at like a high level or anything, but he went more into the coaching side of it, and coached a lot of youth soccer, and I have two older brothers, and they both played, and eventually we all played on a Sunday league team, which is basically ran from a pub, which is common in Liverpool. And then my dad was the coach of that team, and me and my two brothers got to play on the team together, and it was kind of cool. So.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that. I grew up getting to watch my father play Sunday league. I have two brothers of my own. My brother would play with his community from Mexico. They're from a small town in Mexico, so a lot of them congregated here. And I got to watch my dad play until I was able to practice, until I was able to play, and then before you knew it, I was sharing the pitch along with my dad, my two brothers, and uncle. And so yeah, that's it's different. That's very different. It's that soccer grows from a different type of passion,
Yeah, it gives you special memories too. Like just being on the same team with your brothers and your dad being the coach. It was really cool. And then all of our best friends played on the team, and just great memories.
Super great memories. At what point did you realize that soccer was the sport for you and you wanted to take it serious?
I think I always took it seriously. I played obviously from when I could walk up until obviously a few years ago. But yeah, just basically got to about 16, 17, and I was playing at a decent level in Liverpool, kind of semi-pro, I would say, at that stage. But I was also playing cricket at the same time at the highest level in Liverpool.
Oh wow!
Which was like men's cricket. They called it first team cricket, and got to play against some incredible cricket players too. But I got to the age of 18. I'd finished in England. You finish high school at 16. Then you go to college for 2 years before you go to university. And college over there is like a specific subject you want to study for 2 years, which I did sports management. And then you can transition into university. But when I hit 18, I had no interest in going to university. Honestly, I was just kind of wanting to go into the workforce and start a career. But I had the opportunity to go and play cricket in New Zealand. I went to Auckland for 8 months, and I had family out there, so I was fortunate enough to live with an aunt and uncle. Played cricket about 3 months into the season. Appendix ruptured.
No way.
So then the season was over, but I had basically 5 more months if I wanted to stay. So I ended up exploring New Zealand, and I did a triathlon, did a half marathon, just kind of lived out there and just kind of lived the dream a little bit in New Zealand, and it was an incredible experience. And then came back to Liverpool after that experience and kind of started working, and just...
How old were you at that point?
I was probably 18 and a half, pushing 19.
Still very young.
So I'd experienced New Zealand, went back to Liverpool, and then I got a job with a sports company that basically, it's kind of crazy explaining it, but kids who had been to jail basically come out of jail, and our job was to give them an insight into the first coaching badge.
Oh wow!
So we taught a very low level
like
coaching, grassroots coaching course to guys who were coming out of jail to try and start a career in sport. Oh. So I got to work with some very, very interesting characters, but it was amazing for me and my growth and just experiencing kind of different how people grew up and different experiences, and just a really interesting job in a lot of ways. As you can probably imagine.
Yeah, you're rehabilitating people through soccer, though.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then during that time I was in that job, my brother had already come to the US, and he played at Oklahoma City University with Harvey and Billy. So he was already out here. And at that point there was Stuart, who was my brother, Chris Spenlove, Luke Garvey, Andy Taylor, and another English guy. There was Damon from Newcastle. There was 5 English guys basically on the team at OCU at that point. Mm-hmm. And then my brother was playing a pickup game in the summer at Oklahoma Christian. And at the time, Dave Scott was the coach of OC, and Stuart was playing, I guess, and went and sat in the bleachers, and Dave, the coach, was mowing the field. And at that point, I guess David recruited 2 players from Denmark at the time, and they pulled out last minute. So long story short, he basically said to Stuart, you know, any players back home who might be good enough to come over, play. He'd obviously seen Stuart play, and Stuart was a very good player. And then Stuart said, well, I've got a brother at home who's just working and he could play, and like if you want to speak to him, you're more than welcome. And this was like July, maybe, early July.
Really late into it.
And then 3 weeks later, I was at Oklahoma Christian for pre-season.
What did he say? Did he convince you? Did you already have an inclination on maybe wanting to attempt it?
I think it was more... I obviously spoke to Stuart a lot at that time. Like every game he played, I was following the scores. I was watching the games. I was just a sports freak. I watched football all the time.
What did Stuart say about Oklahoma? Hey man, it's not that bad.
Yeah, well, it helped because obviously at the time Harvey, who sadly passed away now, he was from Liverpool.
Oh, really?
So we had that connection, and he recruited Stuart at the Dallas Cup.
Wow. And
then it just kind of like... it just developed from there, really. And then Stuart had a great experience, and they had a really good team. They were competing at the time with SNU for the SAC conference. SNU were really good at that point, and then I think it transitioned into USAO and OCU. But then I got to play against Stuart for 3 years, which is one of the best memories I've got from playing soccer in life. So
while he was at downtown, you were over here
in Edmond, yeah.
For 3 years? You played against for 3 years? Yeah. So he's not that much older than you, is he?
He's 2 years older.
2 years older.
Yeah, so he was a little older when he started university here. But yeah, we got to play against each other for 3 years, and they were good. But I've got to say, one of the best memories, we went to OCU away, and they were number 10 in the nation, and we were not ranked at all. But we had a decent team that year. And we went there and beat them 2-1, and I'll always hang that on my hat. That was
yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
I like that you bring that up. We will never forget that story.
Yeah.
That's nice. So then, you came to, what did you expect? You got here a week before. You're coming from England to the Oklahoma August,
Heat.
end of July.
Yeah.
How was your transition?
My coach at the time, Dave Scott, he always tells me the story. He always remembers. So Stuart got me from the airport, and then Stuart took me to OC. And I get to the parking lot, and Dave comes out and meets me, and he always tells me, never forgets, I had a Bob Marley t-shirt on, and I had hair. So like he always remembered just like the good old days of having hair. Obviously it's gone now, but it was just so hot. I just remember how hot it was, and obviously I wasn't prepared at all. I hadn't really done a pre-season in England because it was so late that I got recruited. And then once I arrived at OC, I had to take a couple of like entry tests to kind of get enrolled in the university. And I had to like miss a couple of days of pre-season just because physicals and all that stuff. I was so late to the party.
You weren't even enrolled into the school yet.
No,
You were
no.
here but not enrolled.
Yeah. And then that Saturday, I arrived on like the Wednesday, missed practice Thursday, practiced on the Friday for like an hour because they were playing Saturday, and I travelled with the team Saturday to Midwestern State, and it was 110, and I probably lasted 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I couldn't breathe. Like, I thought, what am I doing? Like, that was a culture shock. I had an ice pack on each shoulder and one on my head, and it was just incredible how hot it was. So it probably took me about 2 weeks to get used to the heat, and then I was good to go. So, but it was definitely a culture shock.
I can imagine. I can imagine. I mean, and then Liverpool being such a big municipality to come into small Oklahoma City, where soccer is still growing. It's come a long ways in probably the time that you've gotten here.
Massive, yeah.
But it still has a ways to go.
Yeah, I've seen it come a long, long way in my time, so it's really cool.
Now, you did say that you came from Liverpool. I also got to meet Andrew Webster. My freshman year, he was I believe a junior, if not a sophomore. I love that guy, dude. He's such a character, man.
Yeah.
He was your neighbor?
He was my neighbour, so literally our houses were separated by a fence and probably 10 yards apart. Like literally house to house was 10 yards. He was literally best friends growing up. I went home over just at New Year and I got to see him a couple of times, and he's an unbelievable person. Yeah, I've never ever met a person who said a bad word about him.
No,
that says a lot for him.
It's like he's so nice.
Yeah.
When I first met him, I was like, he's so nice. This has to be a front. This has to be fake. And then, I lived in the dorms with him and found out that no, that's the real guy. His parents are a delight as well. Yeah. They would come down and visit. So shout out to Webster if you're watching, man.
Yeah, I grew up with Andrew and his parents and his sister Beth, and great family.
How did you come about finding out that he was here in Oklahoma? Was that just chance, or did that have any correlation?
Yeah, that had correlation.
Okay.
So I tried to get him to Oklahoma Christian.
I couldn't imagine what Oklahoma Christian would have been like if you guys would have got Andrew.
Because I obviously knew Andrew really well as a player and a human, and so I said to my coach at the time, and we still joke about it now to a certain extent, me and Dave, but I said, like, we need to get Andrew in, and Dave wanted to recruit another goalkeeper, so he didn't have scholarship available, so we brought in another goalkeeper. And then that kid quit after like 6 months or 12 months. And Dave's always said like he regretted not getting Andrew at that point when we had the chance. But he would have really helped us.
You played more of a center defensive role? Or
centre mid. I was
center mid role. I just remember seeing you clear anything that would come out of the air. But I guess that goes with your rugbiness as well too. Not rugby, your cricketness a little. Well, somewhat. But you seem to be some type of an athlete, right? You challenge yourself in those type of ways. Is there a reason for that, or did you watch somebody do that, or?
I think it was just more like in school in general. Like I wasn't a huge lover of the education side of it. Like just on a truthful note, I didn't love going to class. I didn't love being in a classroom for hours all day. Like any opportunity I had to play sport, I'd just do it. Like I obviously loved football, loved cricket. I played a lot of badminton in school. I did a lot of running. I've done a lot of running to this point. A lot of half marathons, a few marathons. I've done 2 triathlons. Just kind of like any opportunity to do sport, I did it. And just love sport in general. Just the competitive side of it and competition.
Is coaching filling that void for you?
I would say so. Yeah, especially at this point, like my body's falling apart. There's no way I could play anymore. So I love trying to, give those guys the passion that I had for the sport and try and pass on some things I know and onto them.
Before we get into the coaching, how were your years at Oklahoma Christian?
Amazing. It obviously a bit of a culture shock when I first arrived. But obviously having Stuart, my brother, in Oklahoma City too, and some of his friends were from Liverpool who played at OCU. So I had some familiar faces, and then obviously grew some unbelievable friendships at OC, who I'm still, really some of my best friends now. So yeah, I mean, it probably took a couple of months to settle in, and then I loved the time. I felt like I grew up, and I felt like it gave me an opportunity in life that, has led me now to living a life with my wife and having a great life. So yeah, I have a lot to be thankful for to OC.
Yeah, you made Oklahoma home.
Yeah. I'm coming up to, I think, how many more years? Maybe three more years, and it'll be half of my life in Oklahoma. So yeah, time flies.
I guess at that point you can call yourself an Oklahoman.
Yeah. I just haven't lost the accent.
Nah, that'll stay with you forever. Did your brother end up making Oklahoma home?
He didn't. He lives in St. Louis.
Okay.
So he actually moved around a little bit. He went from Oklahoma to Dallas to St. Louis.
Now, was that your intention to make Oklahoma home, or what caused it? Just
I think it was just obviously went through the transition. I went into the teaching world for a few years with UConn and coaching at the high school. Spent nine amazing years at UConn, and just kind of settled down with me missus now, and it just became home, and I love the place. Yeah, it's a good place.
I had this conversation with someone, and it basically summed up to how we here in Oklahoma City benefit from the foreigners that come to play college, but end up making Oklahoma home. They end up being coaches and end up impacting the game differently. So it's good to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's good to have you.
Yeah.
So would you say you had a pretty successful 4 years at Oklahoma Christian?
Yeah, I'm. When I look back on it, there's always things that you wish you did better, or you committed yourself more to. Like, I would always look back on it and think, I wish I would have committed to the weight room, or I wish I would have committed to speed and agility a bit more, or whatever it might be. I think you always have those feelings in life with anything you do, and that's where probably the passion for coaching comes a little bit. Like I want to see guys succeed, and I want to see them reach the maximum potential. But overall, I mean, I think my 4 years were really good, and made great friendships, and played on some good teams, and played with some great players. So I enjoyed it. It was a success.
Is there any most memorable moment out of those 4 years as a player at OC?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Besides beating your brother Stuart
beating my brother, just playing against my brother in general, and then playing against Andrew was incredible. Just because we grew up together as best friends.
I'm sure he would take that game seriously.
Yeah.
Whenever that game would come around, we would definitely know about it.
Yeah, and he loved the tackle, so I always knew to avoid that 50-50.
I saw that man make another guy cry.
Yeah.
At St. Gregory's University. Freshman me, still getting to know everybody. Threw ball down the left side, and I see the forward running, and I see Andrew running, and he has his run.
Was this at OC?
No, this was at MacU. And I see him running, and I see Andrew, and I think, he's not running at full sprint.
No.
I've seen Andrew run, and he's not running. Why isn't he? And 3 seconds later, I found out why.
Yeah, he's incredible at doing that. He used to just pace his run perfectly to then just hit them as hard as he could.
Oh,
he'd always get the ball, but he knew what he was doing, and it was great.
And then you see his hair just flocking, getting up from the tackle.
Yeah, so I knew not to go into those tackles with him. But no, playing against him, and then I would say I scored the goal against OBU, which was one I'll just remember till,
Describe it to me.
It was actually it sounds surreal, and people would think I'm making the story up, but it was such a foggy night, and the game almost got cancelled because you barely could see both goals, but they decided to play it anyway. And a cross came in from the left side, and defenders headed it out straight up in the air, and I was basically just on top of the box, and I've just hit it first time out the air, right-footed. It just flew in the top corner, and it was just one of those goals where you just how did they do that?
The second it leaves your foot, you
just knew.
It's magic, right?
I just caught it perfect, and I always remember that goal, and so there's some of the moments.
Nice.
Yeah, some great moments.
Yeah, definitely. In the back of your head, did you always know that you were going to be transitioning into coaching? Were you preparing for that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a junior at OC, I think it was I may have even been a sophomore when I was at OC. I had a host family, the same host family as Stuart, and they lived in Yukon. And he had great connections with the high school, and his son had played at Yukon basically. So I basically became a volunteer coach when I was like a sophomore, and just started coaching the high school team at Yukon.
Which is a big program.
Yeah. So I volunteered there for a few years. Then I was the assistant after. Like once I'd finished at OC, I went into the assistant role. While I was a GA at OC with the women's program. And then, once my kind of OPT was up, Yukon kind of pulled me in and said, would you be interested in going into teaching and being the head coach of the high school team? And that's kind of where it all began, really.
It still sounds similar to how you ended up here. Just a series of events just kind of led you here. And that's a life. Yeah,
it's definitely been a journey, and everything's kind of fell into place as I've gone along, and certainly worked hard along the way. But it's been a good journey.
How was your start at UConn? Because it's definitely a different level than playing college.
Yeah.
And high school is definitely different than playing club. You get a wide variety of players, some that are very good, some that are, just not there yet. How is that? Because you're only getting them 6 months out of the year.
Yeah, it's I think it really helped me in a lot of ways to grow as a coach. Like I was hoping we'd talk a little bit about high school, because I think high school coaching, I think just the coaches out there deserve so much credit. The amount of time that goes into it. Obviously, I know I did it for 9 years, but the amount of hours that go into high school coaching that parents don't really realise, people from the outside don't really realise that a lot of these coaches are teaching all day, then going out to the field, and then boys' games in Oklahoma City kick off at 8 o'clock now, and they're getting home at 11, then they're back at 6 the next morning for school. And
season starts in February when it's 13 degrees outside.
Like those high school coaches work so hard, and I think they deserve so much credit for what they're doing, just impacting kids' lives. And I think if people realise what a lot of the high school coaches are being paid, I think it's...
Some aren't. Some are volunteering.
Yeah. I think it's incredible the time that they put in and the effort. So... I learned a lot from a lot of high school coaches. Eddie Wright. I learned a lot from him. Just an unbelievable person, how he treated people. Jared Homer at Mustang. We had a great relationship, even though we were kind of rivals in a way. Felt like I learned a lot from him. Just some great people I met through the high school game, and still have those connections now, which has even helped me in the college game. High school was great. Like I say, I think I learned a lot. Like you say, you don't have the recruitment aspect, so it
takes that side of it away.
Yeah, but in a lot of ways, I think it made me a better coach, because you have to
work with what you have.
Yeah, that's the only choice you've got, and you've got to be competitive in the way that you can with the group of players you have, and
the way you can, because you want to play one way, but sometimes you can't.
Exactly. And that's a big discussion at the moment, at the highest level in football, with Tottenham, with Man United, and you can talk about the highest levels, and those conversations are being had. So I think I learned a lot in that aspect. And then even now, a lot of people will ask me about the college team and how we play and how you want to play, and I think a lot of it depends on the group of players you have, and how can you be successful against the opposition you're going up against. So, a lot of it's about finding where you can hurt the opposition, and I think high school really learnt me a lot of that side of the game.
Yeah, high school really brings that to light. And then I with what you had originally started with high school, I completely agree. I think high school soccer is so important because it provides maybe those players that don't have the opportunity to play club to get that special experience of getting to go travel and play in a filled stadium. And for some players, high school is even more exciting than club ball. You know what I mean? So does England have anything similar to that type of experience? Are they not playing ball in school, or is it just kind of left for the extracurriculars?
They are playing in school, but it's more like a club rather than, like, they're not practicing every day. they might practice on a Tuesday and Thursday, and then they have a game on a Saturday. But I know it's developed a lot more since I was in high school. Like when I was in high school, it was literally you practiced 1 day a week, and then on a Saturday you hoped you had 15 players to go and play, and you were going around people's houses trying to knock them out of bed. Like that was school soccer for me in Liverpool. So I know it's come a long way, and the whole system has improved now. But as far as I'm aware, it's still nothing like it is here. It's a lot more, well run and organised here than England.
Definitely. Until like we get up to college, and then it kind of just something happens between college and professional that we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah.
You were in UConn coaching then. How did the collegiate level of coaching come, or was club coaching in between there? What came first?
No, club was never really a love of mine, honestly. Like
you were never tainted by the.
Yeah, I mean, I respect it, and I coach a club team now. Like I've got a 2012 team at Energy, and I love it. Great group of kids, great group of parents. Like I love it now. But when I was doing high school, and I was also like volunteering at OC with the men's program for a couple of years, I just favoured those two systems of soccer, I guess, rather than club. And I just kind of went a few years without doing club. And then it's only this year I've took on a club team. So it's been a long time since I've done club. But high school was just more me than club. Like it was more about, like you were saying a little bit, like kids who don't have the opportunities like others, and a lot of kids who can't even afford to play club. I think that was more on my heart, I guess. Being from a place like Liverpool, like it's working class. I wouldn't say it's one of the most wealthiest places in the world. And you work hard for your opportunities. So I like that aspect of high school. Like everyone had the opportunity, everyone was able to play. So that's probably where the passion for high school soccer really was just good for me.
I mean, it sounds no different from when you were rehabilitating players making coaches out of players in those situations. So I can definitely see how those go hand in hand.
Yeah, and then I went on to, teach. I taught special education for 8 years at UConn High School, and that was, I think that shaped me a lot as well.
Definitely.
Just in the sense of, be grateful for what we have. Like I was working with kids who, were non-verbal, wheelchair bound, whatever it might be. I think that was so eye-opening and just made you appreciate life in a whole different light.
Yeah, let me make sure this camera's recording.
Yep.
So you said you were volunteering
at OC at the time, yeah. I was on a work visa at that point at UConn, and Dave was still the head coach at OC. So I'd just go down there a couple of days a week and just help a little bit. And if he needed anything doing, I'd help him out, whether it was film or whatever. I'd just kind of help him. He gave a lot to me, so I always just wanted to give back a little bit in a way that I could. So yeah, I helped for a couple of years, and then once OC transitioned to Division 2, it was really difficult to help just with the travel schedule, and so that's when I kind of gave up the college side of it, and just stuck to UConn.
And then when did your opportunity to take a head coach position come in, or were you were assistant first, right?
Yeah, I was assistant at Matthew for 2 years, and that basically originated from Danny Frid, who's one of my best friends now in the US. He became the head coach at Matthew, and then he asked me if I'd be interested in basically, volunteering, because I was still on a work visa with UConn. So I volunteered at Matthew for 2 years as an assistant. But with them being NAIA and in the Student Athletic Conference, it was a lot easier to go to all the games and be at practices a bit more. So I got more and more involved with Matthew. And then obviously Danny went his separate ways. He went to Missouri State. And and did incredible things at Matthew. And then fortunately I was, during that time, got married, obviously went through the green card process and all that, so then I could apply for jobs in soccer that I ultimately wanted to do. And I was fortunate enough to get the Matthew job, and then had a great, I guess, just 1 year there.
Yeah, what a run, right? That
Yeah.
Matthew, I mean, even I don't know if it started before Danny came on, or if Danny was the catalyst that kind of took it off. But I mean, hats off to the job that Dressel and Vice had made as well. But it seems like from then on, it was just and then you take the helm from Danny, and it's just like, well, can Neil do what Danny did? Let's find out. And you had a crazy successful season yourself, didn't you?
Yeah. I think we all had those questions. Could we? I even had that. You take a job like that and you're like, how are you supposed to do any better? Like, what can you possibly do?
To provide context, Danny made it nationally ranked. I think they may have won a sack or two conference.
Yeah, I think overall Danny had won it both years. We won the conference and conference tournament both years that I was the assistant.
Best run Mac you had ever had.
Yeah.
And then it's Neil's job. Neil's turn.
So it was a little bit,
nerve-wracking, I bet.
Yeah, on the front of it you're excited, and in the back of your mind you're like, well, you can't mess this up. And we had to do quite a bit of recruitment that year. Danny left, a lot of guys left, and we basically recruited half of I think I worked out it was like 6 of the starting 11 I recruited. For that year I was head coach, and then obviously a lot of squad players, but the players that did stay from when Danny was the coach were very, very good NAIA players. One of them probably the best player I've ever coached.
You can say names.
Diego Real.
Oh, okay.
He's at Missouri State now. He's just come back from ACL surgery, actually, so he should be back this fall. But as far as just talent and just pure quality, he was incredible. So to have a player like him at your disposal as a head coach is always nice.
Yeah. I think people don't realize that even at the NAIA level, there's some still great players and great competition.
Yeah, some awesome players. I always remember when I played against at OBU, his name was Anderson Silva, I think. He was unbelievable. And then he went on and played pro in Belgium, which made sense. But yeah, just you do find some great players at the NAIA level, and some really, really good teams in general. I would say the difference, what I found was, at the NAIA level, there's probably, we were one of the best in the country that year, and I would say there's probably like 20 teams who could, really, really compete with the highest teams. And then at the NCAA level, it feels like at the Division 2 level, especially when we get to conference, it feels like anyone could beat anyone.
Yeah.
Literally every game's a dogfight, and I would say that's the biggest difference for me. We had some games with Matthew where
the ball could have rolled any way, couldn't it?
Yeah, but you knew the guys were going into some games knowing that they were just expecting to win. Whereas at OC with the D2 level, it's almost like you just don't know. Every game's so tough. So I would say that's the biggest difference between the two levels. But yeah, Matthew, we had an unbelievable year, and still have great relationships there. It was a very, very well run program. AD was awesome with me. Obviously James, who is now the associate head coach, he was my assistant. He's one of my best friends now, and I had a great relationship with everyone at Matthew. It was a good place to me, really good.
How far was that run how long were you at Matthew for?
One season.
Yeah. And you made it up to the tournament? Or?
Yeah, second round. We lost on PKs.
It's so hard to win an Natty, and you just so many games that are just do or die.
Yeah.
By the time you make it to your SAC conference, you can't really lose a game to the top.
And we went into the tournament number 1 in the country. We were unbeaten throughout the whole season. I think it was like 17 something and something. I don't remember exactly. But we had an unbelievable run, and we won a couple of games along the way that were last second winners, and it just felt like we kept finding ways to win. And then unfortunately we got a bye in the first round because we were the 1 seed. And then we played Bellevue, who we'd already beat in the regular season. And then you get to knockout football, and it just wasn't meant to be. We tied 3-3. And then we got a PK with literally 1 second on the clock in double overtime, and we missed it. And it was just one of those things. I mean, you look back on it, and I think you'd always have regrets because we had a great team and I think we could have went really far, but it wasn't meant to be.
At what point of that season did you kind of understand that this is a good team and we can keep it rolling?
I think it was the first weekend. We went to, the first 2 weekends we played Grace, who were a top 5 team, and we played, then the second weekend we played Missouri State and we played Mid-America NAS, who eventually went on to be national champs. And we didn't lose, obviously. We won 2 and tied 1. And at that point we knew we were, with the top dogs. It was just a case of whether we could, produce throughout the whole year, and unfortunately we did. So, but to win the conference and win the conference tournament was special. And then, like I say, to do it with like Jim, whatever you want to call him, as my assistant and as one of my best friends, it was just great to do it like that.
Not bad. Explain the feeling of getting that news that you guys are nationally ranked and then end up being number 1.
Yeah.
But then holding it. I mean, but when you first find out, hey, we're number 1, like, what do you go back to your men and say, like, sure, you want to gloat and, soak it in, but that's a big target on your back as well. So, like, how do you balance that? Like, how do you approach that situation?
I think we always knew that we were going to get everyone's best because we were so highly ranked, especially in conference. Like, that's a big game for everyone. If you beat MacU, you were going to be ranked or close to being ranked. So we always knew we had that target, I guess, at that point. But I just don't ever think we ever allowed ourselves to get big-headed with it. Like, we literally showed up to practice. I think we broke the MacU record for being number 1 for the amount of weeks, and it was I think it was 8 weeks. Yeah. And you'd find out every Wednesday, and we'd go to practice, and I'd bring them all in at the start of practice, and we'd literally just say congratulations, everyone would clap, and then it was straight back to work. Like, it was almost as if it just became, that's where we belong. That's where we need to be if we want to do what we want to do. And we had some incredible, seniors, and we had some really mentally strong players. Kareem, Charlie Betts, who I brought in as a senior just for 1 year. He came from a D1 program and he was incredible mentally and just so fit. He was a machine. And we just had those kind of players who just set the standards, and that was the level. And as a coaching staff, it was easy that we didn't have to chase those standards. Like, the boys almost just expected that, and I think that's half of the making of a really good team. That's the difference maker.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. So we had those special characters within the group, and then obviously you throw in the talent of a Diego and a Jack Price and a Yasha, who's now playing D1. We had some really good talent too.
Nice. So you go through a successful year. I guess at this point, Mitch is
Mitch is OC, yeah.
You probably didn't have plans on moving. You were set, but then what happens? Like, the opportunity opens itself up, and it's like the girlfriend from back in the day saying, "Hey," or what happened?
So I was in England at the time. I went home for Christmas with my wife. So I was in Liverpool, and
season just wrapped up too. Right?
Season just wrapped up, and me and my wife went to. It was her first ever game. We went to Newcastle at home, at Anfield, and she got to sit in the Kop, and that's where I always sat. But it was just a great experience for her.
What is in the Kop?
Basically, the stand behind the goal, like the famous.
She was in the thick of it.
Yeah, she was in the thick of it. My oldest brother, who still lives in Liverpool, he's got 2 season tickets, so I'm fortunate when I go home I can, go to the match with him.
What did she think? Because, sure, I thought of that the other day. I was like, if I had to take my wife to any game where I would want her to feel the atmosphere and the passion, the first one that came to mind was a Liverpool game because, and I could just imagine sitting her in the middle seats, but putting her in the Cup would be, totally different.
Yeah, she was blown away. And obviously, we'd been together for, 3 years or whatever it had been at that point, so she knows every Saturday morning I'm watching Liverpool, and she's learned a lot about it and understands how much it means to people.
It probably clicked for her at that moment. She was like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, he's a little crazy, but he's passionate. So, so she loved it. I mean, it was unbelievable, and it was I actually think it finished 4-2 to Liverpool, so it was like a really entertaining game too. So we had a great experience. We were just over there, and
yeah, look, it's Danny Fred calling you right now.
Yeah, of course. So we do that anyway, and we go to the Newcastle match, and basically at the end of that holiday, I'm coming back on the plane, and get basically a text message saying, are you taking the OC job from a friend? And I was like, hold on. Yeah, like I'd just switched off, over Christmas. I'd switched off and tried to take a break after obviously losing at Nationals, everything, just try and clear your mind. And then obviously I hear Mitch has left, and when I get back to the US, I kind of have conversations with, just some people I trust and lean on. Danny, my brother, Stuart, and Marcus, the AD at Matthew, who was incredible with me. And just had that conversation of like, should I apply? Should I stick to where I'm at? And it was really hard because, I've just had one of the best years, well, probably the best year I'm ever going to have as a head coach in my first year as a college coach. That's going to be really hard to beat.
I can't imagine. Your back's against the wall,
Yeah, so it was almost like, there's that part in my mind where you're like, why would you leave Matthew? Like, why would you leave this job? And I definitely had to process that. I definitely had to consider why. But I always came back to, I had some long talks with my wife, and no matter what route I went down, it always came back to, OC gave me what I've got now. Like that's kind of the opportunity I've got in life is because of OC. So it just felt like, firstly I just had to apply. Like it just became, and I told Marcus at Matthew, and I was very honest with him and had some great conversations with him, and just said, listen, I've got to apply. Like I've just got
to see what happens.
Yeah, I've just got to apply. And obviously I had teammates, ex-teammates, alumni from OC, people calling me, texting me saying, you've got to apply, like, go for it. And I was like, okay. So
it seems like it was written in the wall then, kind of.
Yeah, so I applied, and maybe 2 weeks later, you go through the process, everyone's applying, blah, 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 and then I get a phone call and say, would you like to come for an interview from the current AD at OC? And, I go for the interview and had a great chat, and just pulling into the campus and stuff, it just felt normal. It felt like that's where I belonged. And it was just a challenge. It was a big challenge to
it's division up.
Yeah, division up, and I would say the schedule's a lot tougher. Recruitment was tougher, just in a sense of, my recruitment at Matthew was recruiting for a team that had won the conference championship, been to nationals.
It's easy to recruit for that team.
Yeah,
huh?
Exactly. So, OC provided more challenges, a higher level, not necessarily a better team per se. I would say the Matthew team was ridiculously good, honestly, but that was the goal of trying to make that same situation at OC, and it was too hard to say no ultimately.
Yeah. The easy thing would have been to stay at Matthew. It seems like, good team, good run. But the change, the challenge, it's
a lot of people ask that question, and over the past 12 months I've asked why, and that was ultimately it. I felt like I could give back to OC in a way that I could. You have a lot of alumni in the US, which is different to England. You have people donating money and giving all kinds of money for these facilities, and I'm still not in a position to do that, and something I would love to in the future, but I felt like maybe coaching the team was something I could give back to the university. So that's kind of where it all came about, in my mind, and just kind of had to process it. And then I would say probably the thing that kind of got it over the line was when I spoke to the AD, the current AD at OC, he said he called Marcus at Matthew, who was the AD at Matthew, and basically the AD at OC just said, like, Marcus just told me for 10 minutes how, like, you've got to hire him, like, he's this, he's that, he's this, he's that. And I'll always be so thankful to Marcus for that, because he didn't have to do that. No. I know he told me face to face he didn't want me to go, but at the same time I think he knew that my heart was at OC, and I'll always have great relationship with Matthew too.
Nice.
So
wow.
We left on good terms.
That's crazy. I mean, that just shows the work that you've done. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To have someone just speak about you like that and then to promote you like that, when he could have just as easily been like, he's not going anywhere, But wow, what a love story. So you went back to the old girlfriend, and then, like, What was it like? Going back, get in your office.
Uh,
You were there as a player.
Yeah, it was very different. Obviously, the facilities have come so far.
They have.
The locker room, the coaches' offices, everything now is at the field. The press box at the field, like it's come a long, long way. And you know, from a facility standpoint, it is like incredible now. OC, like it's in a really, really good place. And you know, Mitch left the program in a good place, but at the same time, there was no coach for basically 2 months. So a lot of the guys had gone in the transfer portal. So I show up to OC, and I'm like, it was basically a case of, if you're staying in the portal, I don't need you this spring. Like, you know, you go your way, we'll start something new. So we get to practice, and we literally had 9 players in the spring. Well, we had like 12, but 2 were injured. So we're having practices, and there's basically 10 players, and it's like, wow, we've got a big job on our hands. You know, our expectation was to have around 30 players. So, you know, I took the job basically in March, and we had April and May, and then June and July, obviously, but you had 3 months to recruit 25 players. We ended up bringing in 25 players in the end. But it was a complete brand new start. It was just we had to build from the bottom and really start again. So it was almost, I was like a deer in headlights, honestly. It was almost like panic. Like you had to recruit so fast. And I had great relationships with recruitment, you know, agencies and everything from my Matthew days. But, you know, it's a different animal. When you, like I say, when you're not recruiting to a team who's been to nationals, and it's more expensive, you know, but you are recruiting to a bigger campus, a better campus, and more college experience, I would say. So there was a lot of different aspects to it. But yeah, I had to do a lot of recruiting last spring, so it's kind of nice going to practice this morning. There was 25 players.
So you're rolling into year 2.
Yeah, rolling into year 2.
Well, your first year didn't go that bad.
No, not bad. Overall, we were, you know, I think deep down, when you get to the end of the season, you're obviously disappointed because we kind of dropped off the second half of the season. But I think I learned a lot about the conference, how tough it is. Every game, like I say, it was a dogfight. There's a lot of travel involved. So you've got to get the travel right. You've got to get the hotels right. You've got to get the timing right. And there's a lot of organising that goes behind kind of being in a conference like that. And I think I learned a lot about it. You know, when I look at on face value, as far as playing against good teams, we did fantastic. When I think that, you know, the starting 11, or even, you know, the 16, let's say 16 to 18 that we used in games, maybe 3 of them were at OC before I took the job. So it was a brand new
sounds
team.
no different from picking up a high school team.
Yeah.
Basically dealing with what you have and making it work.
And we started the year with not really knowing what to expect. And then Mitch left me a pretty difficult schedule. The schedule was already done. So
thanks a lot, Mitch.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. But we actually went through the non-conference schedule really, really well. And, you know, we played Rogers State, we played SNU, who both ended up going to nationals, and you know, we tied SNU. It was probably one of our best performances of the year. I think, you know, open conversation, SNU would say the same. We pretty much dominated them that night, and we just couldn't get the winning goal. And then we went to Rogers State and won at Rogers State, which was the first time the program had done that. So, you know, to have those 2 results, and then we played 2 top 10 teams, Pueblo from Colorado and Colorado Springs, and we lost to Pueblo 1-0 in the last minute, or last 10 minutes, and then Colorado State, who actually went like 15 games unbeaten before they lost, you know, we lost 1-0 and we missed so many chances. So we were competing with really, really good teams. So I think the signs were good, you know, and then I think we learned a lot about conference. And we lost 2 or 3 games where, you know, when you look back on it, you're like, maybe we should have just, you know, it wasn't our night. Maybe we should have just settled for the draw instead of trying to chase the win, and just get points on the board. And I think you learn that, you know, as you go. And but definitely as a conference, every game was tough, and just a real battle.
What's the name of the conference?
The Lone Star.
Lone Star Conference.
So we have like
Colorado.
No, we have more Texas.
North Texas.
We have St. Edwards in Austin, St. Mary's in San Antonio. We have 2 down by the border, Laredo and Sul Ross. We have Texas A&M International, West Texas, Sul Ross, Dallas Baptist. So it's a great conference. And like I said, I think it hurts the conference in a way because anyone can beat anyone. So then it affects people's rankings. And like our conference only ended up having 1 team go to nationals, which was unbelievable. The team that actually won our conference didn't go to nationals. And that just shows across the board how competitive it is. But no, I overall we competed every game. We competed 100%. And there was many games where, if we take our chances, we probably come out with a different result. So it was highly encouraging. But now it's kind of, can we pick back up and go again? So
I think so. I mean, considering where you started off last season, building upon it this season, I mean, I don't want to jinx it and say it should be easier than it was before, but, the ball can roll in any way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm excited. We've got a good group of lads, and obviously we'll add to that with some more recruitment. So, yeah, it's exciting.
Let me make sure this camera's working.
Yep.
Is recruiting this season a lot easier than it was last season?
Yeah, there's more time.
More time, of course.
More time. I mean, when I took the job last year, I really felt like 90% of players had already committed other places, and I think because I've come through coaching the high school level and being in Oklahoma so long, I would like to, have local players.
Okay.
Yeah, you go.
So they run a program where they train homeschooled kids.
Oh, nice.
During the day.
Brilliant. Yeah. So, yeah, I've always been one that my experience as a player in college, like having local players was so important for me as an international student, just as far as, having a family you can call on, or Thanksgiving break or Christmas break. If you can't go back to your home country, like, you need those relationships to make your college experience better. And I think last year, just because of the nature of the time, and I had to go so international with the recruitment. Whereas this year, I would like to find more of a balance and try and build a culture within the program at OC to kind of where it's, players want to be at OC for 4 years, or, if they're there for 2 years and they're incredible, then maybe then move on. But, it's hard to... I would say it's harder to keep hold of international players and build a culture for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, I've tried to bring in a few more talented local guys, and I think the big thing for me is that I truly believe there's a lot of them out there who are good enough. Like, I've got no doubt. Just a prime example is, Ethan from UConn, who I brought into OC this year, Ethan Nicolo, like... I obviously coached him in high school, so I knew how talented he was. But I always fully believed he was good enough to be a college player. And he's come in as a freshman, and freshman team of the year, scored the most goals as a freshman in the whole conference, and made second team all conference. So I know there's players good enough here. I've just, I'm trying to get those guys in, and I have great relationships with a lot of the high school coaches, like I said earlier. So, I'm trying to pinpoint those players. And even at MacU, that 1 year I was there, I was, when I sat down with Jim, my assistant, and we had the conversations about recruitment, we had a clear objective of bringing in some local lads. And I watched, when I was the high school coach at UConn, I watched Freddie for 4 years at Northwest Classen, Freddie Palacios, and I always said, and I've told Freddie this story, but like when I was coaching at UConn, and I'd speak to Danny, he was the head coach at MacU at the time. I said, if I ever got a head coach job, he'd be the first kid I went after. Like, that kid was incredible.
Yeah, it's a force for the size that he's in.
Yeah.
Such a presence.
Honestly, so good on the ball. And it doesn't matter where you're from. that kid's a quality player. So I always, said if I ever got a head coach job, he's the kid I'm going after. So, that was the objective number one when I got the MacU job, and fortunately I got him.
And he ended up being Gatorade Player of the Year that summer.
Yeah, and then he played his freshman year with me at MacU, and he was amazing.
He was still scoring some bangers,
yeah,
I see.
Yeah, and then we had obviously Jimmy Cabrera and Jair Estrada, and we had a good core of local lads, and I think that's important to me. Just so, internationals have those relationships off the field, so where they can feel at home and kind of just feel settled quicker. So that's been a big objective in this recruitment cycle, just having more of a core of US players. So,
for the players that are looking to get recruited, those local players, what advice would you give them? Something that'll help them stand out,
Honestly, I think it's just in some ways you've got to be lucky, right? Like, I go and watch a lot of high school games, and I'll have players who write to me all the time. And we probably get 50 players a day writing to us, through whether it's through a player personally or whether it's through a recruitment agency. It's just so many players out there now who are looking to play college soccer. You've just got to take your chance. Like, you've just got to, in that moment, if you write to me and I say, okay, I'll come and watch you play.
So it does work. Writing to you could get your attention.
Absolutely. Like Deer Creek this Saturday, I'll go and watch all of the high school scrimmages there, and some of the best teams in the state are there. So, in that moment, it'll be cold. It'll be just high school scrimmages. It won't be like competitive. It won't be like, it will be, but it's not a district game, all those types of things. But in those moments, that's when we can come and recruit. Like, this is the time of the year where we can get out and watch high school players. So it
kind of goes to show you that it doesn't matter what game it could be. Any game can matter. It could be a scrimmage in Deer Creek in the middle of February. You could be getting watched by the Oklahoma Christian coach.
Absolutely. I just think it's a case of I'm a big believer that the players who can play the level will get to the level. Like, I think there's a certain amount of commitment off the field. I think there's a certain amount of commitment of applying yourself in the right way, having the right attitude, being good in the classroom, which ultimately is a major part of being a college player. I think all those aspects, if you're good at all those things, you've got a real chance. So
the cream will rise to the top, right?
Yeah. Usually.
But it is a lot of chance as well.
Yeah.
Maybe going to open tryouts, ID camps, help get, put you on the map as well to get under the, on your attention. You have an ID camp coming up as well, don't you?
Yeah, we do, March 1st. And we had the ID camp last year, and obviously we were looking to recruit a lot of players last year, and we took 2 players from the ID camp. So, it's possible. There's opportunities out there, and I believe there's a lot of good players here. It's just we've got to put them more in the limelight.
Does having gone through Oklahoma Christian help you coach those players coming through Oklahoma Christian?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when you bring in players, international players, I think from different cultures, different beliefs, different backgrounds, I think it's massive. I think it's helped me a lot. That I can be on a level of understanding with them, with maybe frustrations they have or maybe questions they have. I think I can really help those guys, and then obviously the local guys, I would say, have more of an understanding. A lot of the local guys want to go to Oklahoma Christian in a way, but I can help those guys from a how good can you be? Like, my job is ultimately to challenge these players. I feel like I'll always be a coach or a person, not even a coach. I'll be a person who always treats everyone the right way, and I'll, try and give everyone an opportunity. And but ultimately, my job is to challenge them and get the best out of them I can. And that's ultimately the goal I set myself every day when we're in practice or when we're, in study hall, whatever it might be. How can I challenge these guys to be better? And if you've seen our 6 a.m. practice this morning and the amount of running they did, they won't like me for it, but they know I'm doing it because I want them to be better. And, those conference games last year where we might have lost in the last 10 minutes, like, I want us to have more legs in the last 10 minutes. Like, it doesn't always make sense to a player, and I remember that personally. Like, you don't always understand why you're doing things in practice, but I want them to be mentally stronger. I want them to be ready for those big challenges in the fall. So,
do you push your kids? These are men we're talking about.
Yeah.
You're meant to be active over the summer. I see that many
Absolutely.
players are now, playing with new teams that are getting formulated here in the city and whatnot. But that's big now. If you're not playing in the summer, you're getting left behind.
Yeah. I think it's a big part of just the system now. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there to play, and I think the hardest thing with college soccer right now is the season itself is
so short and
2.5 months. Like, it's such a short time. So if you're, when you're a kid, or, you play club all year, or you play club and high school, and you get to college and it's like, oh, we're only competitive for 2.5 months. Like, it's unbelievable. So, no, I think summer's really good. I think it brings them in the fall in a much better place than not playing in the summer. Obviously, it comes with risk of injury, and it comes with different types of risk, but I think overall it's a positive to be playing football through the summer.
I agree. They come back sharper, more fit. They've been competitive a little longer than those that just haven't done anything over the summer.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point, and I always like to ask that, how short and compact the college season is, leads to injuries, and you're playing a few games during the week and then trying to squeeze practices in. Towards the end of the season, it's, of course, who's best, but then as well as who's the fittest.
Yeah.
Would you do anything different with the season? Would you make it, like the EPL all year long? Putting aside the difficulties of it, Because I've had that conversation with people, and they say, well, what would that look like for the players? They're not in school over the summer. With all that forget all the difficulties of it. It would be better to have it year round, wouldn't
Absolutely.
it?
Even a spring and a fall season. It doesn't even have to be through the summer, the college season. But if you could, like many leagues now around the world are doing like Christmas breaks. Like, you could do that with the college game and still have a spring season. So I think long term, I think it's definitely going to head that way. I think Division 1 is obviously already almost there. I think that's in the pipeline to already happen.
I've heard. So I guess once they fall, I guess the other chips will fall in line as well.
And I'd be shocked if we're not sat here in 10 years and it's not a year-round sport.
With cups in between the season and whatnot, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, but it's just such a growing game, and I think for the amount of work that goes into it, it feels like it's over so fast. It'd be nice if it was a longer season for sure.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome too, in LA, just so we can match up with the yearly schedule.
Yeah.
Are you pretty excited about the World Cup coming to the US, or?
Yeah, I am. I'm probably more excited of just watching the World Cup. I'm just a massive watch. I just watch football all the time. Yeah. Like, before I was, married and full-time jobs, I always remember like Saturday, Sunday, like I'd just wake up, Premier League in the morning, I'd go to La Liga around lunchtime, I'd go to Serie A about 2:00 for the late game, then I'd go to USL because my friend was the assistant coach at the Energy. I'd watch USL, then I'd watch MLS at 8:00 at night.
Jesus.
I'd just sit and that's all I did. Just watch football all day long and all night. And that was ultimately like, I knew that was kind of what I loved, and just loved watching it and studying it and understanding the game. And even over the past 10 years, you kind of see how football changes and how the game itself changes on, tactics, on beliefs, and just kind of, it just fascinates me, kind of all of that, just watching the game. And then obviously I'm massively passionate about Liverpool. Like, I'll never miss a Liverpool match, and my schedule is built around Liverpool games. Like, my guys know if Liverpool are playing at 2 on a Wednesday, we're more than likely not practicing at 2.
I don't think people understand the type of passion that comes from watching football in England. I'll tell you another story of Andrew. Andrew is a big Everton fan.
Big Everton fan.
Just like you said, huge Liverpool fan. He's a even huger. I don't know. I guess you guys are here, but it's huge.
We actually sat together in the Everton end for Liverpool versus Everton.
No way.
Yeah, we were only young. We were probably.
You obviously weren't wearing your red.
I was because I was a kid.
Oh,
so like,
okay.
I got away with it because I was a kid.
You probably
a couple of
wouldn't do it now.
adults, a couple of adults about 20 yards away did not get away with it, and they took a couple of right hooks. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
But I always remember sitting in the Everton end in the Gladys Street, which is their main end, and Andrew, to be honest, when I was even younger, I'd go to Everton games with Andrew just because we were best mates and we just loved watching football. But as I got older, and then I went to the derby, and Gary McAllister scored in the last minute. Gerard Houllier was the coach of Liverpool at the time. And I always remember jumping up and celebrating. And I got away with it because I was a kid, but I look back on it now and it's like, wow, you were stupid. Like,
Yeah, I mean, the game just takes over.
Yeah.
And I try to help people who aren't in the soccer world understand, but it's different. I during my honeymoon was fortunate enough to watch Chivas America game, which is probably equivalent to a Liverpool and Everton game. It was a cup match, second leg. They go to penalties. I'm wearing my red jersey. My wife's wearing the yellow. And my team wins away in penalty kicks. And it was at that moment that I knew I should take my jersey off. Yeah. And sure enough, I took it off, handed it to my wife, put it in the purse. I go to the restroom, and I come back out, and I told my wife they were beating a big man to a pulp because he's wearing a red jersey in there. It was... Yeah. But that's just the emotions that, football brings out of people in those situations.
It's not always good, but I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot over the years. I was lucky. I followed Liverpool everywhere. I've been to pretty much all the stadiums in the Premier League, and
is there one game that you were just like, can't believe I was a part of that one?
Istanbul, Liverpool, AC Milan.
You were at Istanbul,
Champions League final. Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up. Like, imagine if you were in Istanbul, watching your team come back, and how is that? I mean, because you're at the bottom, you're feeling like crap. Your team is down multiple goals.
Yeah, I was 17 at the time, I believe. Yeah, I was 17.
Let me make sure this camera's recording. Yeah. I definitely want to record it. 15 minutes. 17. Yeah. Istanbul.
I've actually been very fortunate. I've been to three European Cup finals, or Champions League finals, I guess you would call it. But Istanbul, obviously, don't tell me wife, but probably the best night of my life was Istanbul. But I always remember we basically went on vacation. Me, my dad, two brothers. So we went as the four of us, and then there was a few other friends, and we stayed in the vacation area. It's called Marmaris in Turkey, and we went for a week and basically stayed. I always remember it was such a long drive to Istanbul, which we didn't realise before we booked it. So we get this coach or bus. We get this bus to Istanbul, and you have to go on a boat. You have to go over this...
From England?
No, from Marmaris. So Marmaris is the very south of Turkey. Okay. And then Istanbul was further north. And the drive to get there was insane. But we drove all day on this bus. And then we get to Istanbul, and it was just thousands and thousands of Liverpool fans. Like, I've never seen anything like it. Just the whole city went. Like, it'd been that long since we'd been in a European Cup final. It was just, that was the thing at the time. And I just always remember it was the Ataturk, the stadium, and I just always remember driving into the stadium, and like, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was just in the middle of hills, and it was this beautiful stadium. But then there was these like mountains and hills surrounding the stadium, and there was police on top with guns, just lay on the stomach with the guns watching the fans. Yeah. And you're walking in and you're just like, what is going on here? But obviously you get to the game. I think we went into the game obviously believing we were underdogs. Like, AC Milan's team was ridiculous.
Shevchenko, young Kaká, Seedorf, just...
Maldini, Nesta, like Dida in goal. Like, it was just an incredible team. So I think we went into it thinking we were underdogs. I mean, we had like Harry Kewell playing, and I think...
a young Stevie.
Yeah, young Stevie who we can talk about more if you want. But we get to half-time, and obviously you're 3-0 down. I'll never ever forget Kaká's pass to Crespo for the second goal, where he's chipped it over Dudek. That pass is probably the best pass I've ever seen in my life from Kaká. Like, watching it live, how he bent it round the defender, round Carragher. He basically bent it right around Carragher with the outside of his foot. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think I ever will again. And it's one moment in a football match that I don't think gets enough credit. Yeah. Like, people talk about Crespo's finish or Gerrard's header, or, the goals, but that pass, I've honestly never seen a pass like it. So anyway, 3-0 down at half time.
How are you feeling? What's the family vibe? What's the vibe for all the Reds? I mean,
just depression, right? Like, it's just pure depression. Like, you've travelled all that way, you've spent all that, whatever. You don't obviously bring it back to money, but you've spent all that money, you've gone to Turkey.
People leaving the stadiums, maybe?
Yeah, there was a few. There was a few who left the stadium. So obviously a lot of frustration. I always remember, my brother probably won't like me saying it, Stuart, the one who lives in St. Louis, but he was like one of those fans that was like, it's over, like, what are we doing? Like, let's get out of here, like, what's the point? And I always remember my oldest brother, Robbie, saying, like, listen, we've come all the way from Liverpool, like, this is a dream to be in the European Cup final, like, let's just stick it out. And
wise words.
Yeah, let's just see it through. And obviously...
And then one falls in.
Yeah, Gerrard puts the team on his back, basically, and...
2 falls in.
The rest is history, and then...
Now we're tied.
Yeah. In a case of 7 minutes, like, you might never see anything like it again.
No.
You know, it was... Especially for the team who were the underdog.
Yeah.
For the team to come back like that, who was, you know, the second best team, ultimately.
You remember celebrating for a second, third goal?
I remember the penalty. I remember the penalty vaguely where Gerrard got brought down, and then we just couldn't believe Gerrard wasn't taking it. I always remember standing there with my brother or my 2 brothers. I don't think my dad was sat with us. I think he had a different ticket. But the 3 of us, the brothers, were stood there, and we just couldn't... I always remember thinking, why is Gerrard not taking the penalty? And Alonso stepped up, missed it, the keeper saved it, and then he scored the follow-up. And the elation at that point was just... I mean, the noise, the flares, the flags, you just knew AC Milan were done at that point. Like, it was just meant to be. And then, I don't know if you remember it, Shevchenko had a chance from basically 2 yards out. And Dudek just stuck his arm out and he saved it, went over the crossbar. And at that moment, you just thought, Liverpool's name's on the cup. Like, it was just meant to be. So, yeah, that was unbelievable. That's one of the best nights of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of the most memorable nights for people that weren't even at the stadium.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the comeback story.
Yeah, and that's the one we probably should have lost. And then 2 years later, we went to Athens, and I went to that one, went to Greece, and we were the better team that night, and we lost. But when you weigh it up, it's like, oh, I'd take Istanbul every time. Like, that was unbelievable.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
That's a story right there.
Yeah, that's a memory that'll live with me forever.
Yeah.
I mean, like my dad followed Liverpool everywhere through the 70s, 80s. I think he's actually been through, he might be at 7 now, maybe 7 Champions League finals. But he's seen them, you know, win it all over Europe, and obviously the 70s, 80s were the glory days, and hopefully, you know, it might be returning a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Those are things that you won't be able to realize until 10 years from now and say, those were the glory days right there.
Yeah. So, but to just live Istanbul, I always said, like, you know, if we never win a thing again, that was the
That's it right
that
there.
was the goal. Yeah, that was the moment you'll always remember for the rest of your life, and I always will. The only thing you always want more, right?
Yeah.
I just want to win the league with fans in the stadium now. Like, that's the only thing left. We obviously won it during COVID, but I'd love to do it with the fans in the stadium.
So you're saying if things go the way they're going, would you take an emergency trip to watch a...
It's possible. I don't think I'd get a ticket now because I don't go every week, and it's hard. Those tickets will be gold dust, but the parade in the city and everything would be insane. Like when we won it in Madrid. What was that? I don't even know what year it was. We beat Tottenham in the final at Atletico Madrid's stadium, and I flew back from Oklahoma for that one. I went to Madrid. And we basically did the day trip. Me and my oldest brother, we flew from Liverpool to Madrid, and then straight after the match, obviously everyone's so happy, he just won the European Cup. Origi scored the goal of his life. Origi's a hero now forever in Liverpool history.
That's funny. What's better, winning the Champions League or just making sure Tottenham doesn't win it?
No, win the Champions League. Tottenham are non-existent to Liverpool. But we fly back to Liverpool, and then the next day was the parade, and the city centre was just a sea of red. Like, it was just incredible. I'll never forget it. And I had a friend who basically worked in hotels, and on the waterfront in Liverpool, where the open top bus was coming down with the trophy and stuff, he got us in one of the hotels he worked in, and we were on a balcony in one of the rooms, and we just got to watch it from looking above, and it was just so memorable. But to have that with the Premier League, I think that would be the icing on the cake. I think the cherry on top. So hopefully we can achieve that, whether it's this year or not. Hopefully one day we'll achieve that.
We'll see. We'll see. That coach came in similar to you coming into the kind of like the Mac U role. You know, you pick up Klopp's mantle, and you're just like, all right, what do we do? Yeah. Let's see what we can do. And he seems to be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think he's done a good job up to now. So hopefully we can keep it going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been here for about an hour, almost an hour, 30 minutes. This has been great.
Yeah.
It's been really good. Yeah. Before we go, was Stevie G your guy, or was that's your guy?
When I was younger, like I was probably 10, 11, 12, when Michael Owen burst on the scene at 18, and obviously scored that goal for England against Argentina and stuff. I went the FA Cup final in 2000, what year was that? 2003, maybe 2002. And we played Arsenal in the cup final, and Arsenal absolutely battered us. I mean, I always remember Stefan Onshaw on the line, the centre-back for Liverpool. He saved it with his hand. It was going in, Henry shot, and he saved it and kept it 1-0 to Arsenal. And then Michael Owen, the last 15 minutes, just took over and just scored two incredible goals. And I always remember, like, I was probably 10 rows from the front, and he did a cartwheel right in front of me. And at that moment, like, Owen was like my hero.
The guy.
He was my hero at that point. And then he obviously made the stupid decision to go to the dark side and played for Man United. So Owen can't be that guy anymore. But Gerrard was the best player I've ever watched. Obviously, you could argue now that like Salah's getting to that level. I would argue personally Van Dijk's even better. But Gerrard will always be number one, I think, for me.
Yeah, he represented the crest well.
Yeah, and he was from the same town as me. He's from Huyton. So he grew up same area as me, and he was always the one like you looked up to as a kid, because that was the dream, that was everyone's dream, and he achieved it. And yeah, he just put the club on his back when the club was going through, a few dark days and ownership issues and all that stuff. He had this moment where he thought about leaving, and he obviously seen sense and stayed. And I think him winning the European Cup for Liverpool was just magical, really. But as a player, I mean, he could do everything.
Yeah.
He could do everything.
Box to box.
There's not a thing he couldn't do. And then, obviously, in Istanbul, when the Liverpool were dead on the feet, and we just didn't have a right back. I can't remember who went off. Someone went off injured, and he basically put Gerrard right back, and he was just incredible. You could play him anywhere. He could do it all. Some of the goals he scored,
screamers.
Yeah, like the Olympiacos goal to get us even into the knockout stages of that Champions League, 2005. I mean, he hit a ball on a half volley. I just don't think you can hit a ball any better. He was just that type of player. I think he had it all, and I think if he was in, if he played for Madrid or if he played for Man United during that time, the powerhouses in those years, I think he'd be renowned as one of the best players ever to play the game. It's just he was in a team that didn't win all kinds of awards, and when you see people like Zidane come out and Iniesta come out and they say like, Gerrard was one of the best players I ever played against, I think that just says everything.
It carries weight.
Yeah, I think that just says everything you need to know about Gerrard. Yeah, he was incredible. Nice.
European football is amazing to watch. Yeah. World Cup football is amazing to watch too. Yeah. Which one for you would be your favourite to watch?
Club? Yeah, Liverpool. Yeah. I'd rather Liverpool win a league than England win the World Cup. I'll just be honest. My passion's with Liverpool, and I want England to do well, of course, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If Liverpool lose in a cup final, I'm going to be unhappy.
It sounds like you follow England, though. I've spoken to some people. I think Danny was the one who was just like, international football, I'm checked out.
Yeah. I mean, I follow them in the tournaments. Mm-hmm. I don't follow all the friendlies and everything. It just doesn't do anything for me. The only thing I care about when it's friendlies is Liverpool players don't get injured. Like, that is ultimately all I think about. But, yeah, Liverpool and England in general has always had a bit of a, I don't know, I guess a grey cloud over it a little bit. And that's just a very historic thing that runs through the city and runs through football in general in England. And there's a lot behind that, but I want them to do well in tournaments, but ultimately I'd take Liverpool winning any trophy over England winning a trophy.
I can see that. I mean, some would say the level of competitiveness and the level of football is higher, and the champions than it is in the World Cup.
Yeah, you could argue that for sure. But I do appreciate. I think since I've lived in America, and obviously I've played with players now from all over the world and coached players from all over the world, I do appreciate how passionate people are for the country. Like, now I've played and coached with people from Argentina, Paraguay, Costa Rica. I've got on the team now at OC, Colombia.
Spain,
I think as you grow up, you kind of understand how important it is to other countries, because you were just so narrow-minded living in Liverpool, and Liverpool was the only thing that mattered. I do appreciate how, especially South American countries, I do appreciate how passionate they are for the countries, and I think that's ultimately why they'll always be more successful in England, because they just care so much more about it. But yeah, I am impressed with. Since I've met people from Brazil and South American countries, like, now we have Luis Diaz at Liverpool. Like, I watched Copa America because Luis Diaz was playing, and I love Diaz. Well, I love every Liverpool player.
The passion that guy plays with, man.
It's
He's
incredible.
Just a bulldog.
Yeah.
And to think there's way more players that play just as equally. Yeah. Munoz is another one that surprises me very well. I forget where. I think it's at Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Another, I think is
Colombian. But you can see how much it means to them when they play for the country. Whereas I just don't think you see that with England.
I can see that.
And I think that's just the difference between countries. I think because the Premier League's so big doesn't help the national team, but
I think so. I can agree, because I feel like Mexico suffers through that same thing, that when people find their starting 11 spot in England, it's so hard to take it away from them commercially, because they're, they are the superstars that they are, but marketability wise as well, you can't just sub one out to put another one in. Players have to be so established to make that international England squad. But before we end the podcast, I did want to ask, you being, I guess you could say, so soccerly cultured with the experience that you have, what advice would you give the professional team that's being made here? How could they try to emulate the culture that they have in Liverpool, which is impossible to do, but I mean, maybe you have something.
I actually think just before the energy went away, I think it was Jimmy Nielsen. I think it was his last maybe 2 or 3 years. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how many years he was the head coach of the Energy. But I remember for a couple of years straight, they made the playoffs. And
that one run.
Yeah, I always remember. I always went because Jimmy's assistant was one of my best friends. So I went to every game, and I always remember when they got to those playoff games, it felt like a real game. It felt like the city was behind it. It felt like there was a fan base. It felt like, there was flares, there was flags, there was. I think they finally figured out that they needed a fan section, and people who didn't want to be around that could sit on the sides of the stadium, which I think is just so common now in stadiums in general. It always has been, but in America, I think they've finally realised that. And I think it really, really started to have the football experience when you went to the match. And then obviously it went away. But it's awesome, it's coming back. I think the biggest thing for me would be, you've got to fill the stadium. And how do you do that? I think there's a million different ways you could go at it, but I think if you're going to build a stadium and you're going to try and achieve being MLS and you're going to try and achieve these big things, there's got to be the fan base. And I think there is. I think the difference in probably Oklahoma or American culture in general is like living in Liverpool, you just want to go to the match. Like, if I had a game as a 15-year-old playing, I want to go to the Liverpool match. I want to, if there's a family meal for someone's birthday, we're going to the Liverpool match.
I'm going hungry.
Yeah, we're going to the Liverpool match. And I think in some way, going to the match, and I know they're not called the Energy anymore. I don't know what they're going to be called, but going to the Energy match has got to be something that you just want to do as a football fan. And I'm sure there's a lot of smart people in the organisation who are going to come up with creative ways of trying to do that. But I just think that's if you're gonna build the stadium, you've got to be able to fill it, and not just the opening game of the season. Like, you've got to get those a core of diehard fans who are going to go through the journey thick and thin, whether you lose, whether you win, whether it takes 2 years to really establish yourself again. Like, you've got to have that core group who, you're going to play against maybe the best team in the league and you might lose. It's like, I still want to go to the match. And I think that's what you've got to create as a club to ultimately then become successful in the future at that level. And like I said, I think the energy really got there towards the end. And then unfortunately, it obviously had to go away. But that's what I think the new team has got to achieve. And there's obviously target markets and people you can really target as far as, whether you sign a big time Mexican player, for instance, or an English player or whatever it might be. But like, if you're like strategic with your signings, you're going to get fan bases come with that. So I think it's about creating a culture, and you just can't rush it. But there's got to be a plan in place. So I'm sure there is a plan in place. But I think it'd be awesome to have I think it'd be great to have the team back. Yeah,
they're coming back.
Yeah.
But I think your point is a very good one, to make that game day experience kind of memorable, something that they're going to want to not miss ever again. Yeah. And I think having a stadium, a proper home for the professional football team will work, because there was really only so much they could do at Taft Stadium. But having a brand new stadium, I feel like we'll be able to fill those seats. We can fill them up for American football. Exactly. Why can't we do it for the real football? You know what I mean?
I think there's definitely there's people out there to fill the stadiums. It's just, you've got to make it something that they feel passionate about. And I think the team name will have a big part to do with that. What colour they pick, like for the kids, and you want kids to wear the jerseys. And I think that was what was cool with the energy, was it got to a point where like you would go to indoor places like here or Soccer City or wherever you would go, there would be energy jerseys, and that's a sign of like you're creating your own legacy. And that's what ultimately I think is needed with the new team.
Nice. Well, I agree. More exciting times. Hopefully 2027 can get here pretty quickly.
Yep.
Well, do you want to leave us with anything? We've been here for an hour and 30 now, and I've really enjoyed
me too.
The combo.
What I'll leave you with?
Come watch some OC games.
Yeah, enjoy OC. Come and watch OC. Just watch soccer in the community. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think there's a lot of high level soccer out there. Obviously, MacU, OCU had a great year.
SNU.
Yeah, you've got SNU in the area, D2.
We got a lot of colleges here.
Yeah, we do.
Oklahoma City area.
We're lucky to have a lot of teams, and there is a lot of good players in the area. So get out there, watch games. For all the kids out there, just keep learning, keep watching the game.
Stay hungry.
Yeah,
keep practicing.
Enjoy the ride. Soccer's a great one, and I just think it's a good place to be at the moment, and the game's growing. Game is growing.
Well, I want to say I appreciate your time here. The door and the mics are always open for you. Okay. I remember when I first thought of trying to get you on, I was like, oh, look, MacU has a new coach. I should try to get him on. The season started, and I normally don't like to pull coaches mid-season because anything can happen. And once the season ended, I said, oh, well, he had a damn good season. I should get him on after the season. Then the news broke that you were gone, and I was like, well, I'll catch up with them eventually. Being able to catch up with you now, with everything that you've done now, I think it was well worth the wait.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, and thanks for having me. And hopefully we can continue to get better at OC and have a good fall.
Yeah, so. For sure. I'll be rooting for you guys, and hopefully coming out to watch some games.
I appreciate it.
But if you've listened to the podcast up to this point, we appreciate you, and hope you guys tune in to the next podcast episode. Thank you guys very much. Peace.